So this sorry looking stuff is my garlic plants. It's what's left of them. I have been so patient. I've waited and waited and waited and waited and waited to harvest these, but they just look so sorry now that I'm just going to do it. And these were planted back in October, November time in buckets at the top of the garden. So a couple were put in the greenhouse, but were just left until now. Really haven't done a whole lot with them other than water them, and they've done okay. They look okay. That's the elephant garlic there. So I'm just going to show you how I harvest the garlic, and it's as simple as these buckets are so good. Just tip them out. I did put a few stones in the bottom of some of them just for a bit extra drainage. Fill the pot up, and when they were first filled up, they were right to the top of the bucket, so you can see how the compost has compacted over time. And this is no special compost, just garden compost with some goodies added like bloodfish and bone. And here you can see literally just pulling out the garlic. And the cloves, they're not supermarket massive cloves, and probably I could do better. But this is actually my first year of growing garlic properly. I've planted the odd kind of clove before and just to see what happened, but this is like the first time I've kind of grown it more than a few cloves. So it's interesting to see, and I think every year you can kind of improve. And I think probably know what I know now would have probably left them in the greenhouse a little bit longer, because the ones in the greenhouse did much better. And I took them out quite early because it was good weather this spring. But the ones in the greenhouse that I left a bit longer, they did produce bigger bulbs. Not much bigger, but big enough, and I'd probably put a lot more feed in as well. So I think they just ran out in the end. So here's the garlic laid off, looking pretty scruffy. I did try to scrape one at this time, but they're just too wet, so I'm just going to let them dry for a few days and then try and scrape some of the dirt off them. You can see they're not bad. Those are the mono bulbs, but they'll still cook. They're all right. And that's the big elephant garlic. Looks like it's got little ears there. You can see, not bad. And there's some cloves that kind of split apart, which is a shame because it was a good garlic. There they go. There they all are in the entirety. So a couple of days later, I've cleaned them off, and literally I just rubbed a Magnum lollipop stick just gently over the thing, and that was enough to take all the dirt off. They're looking pretty good. Quite pleased with that. So a couple of cloves of garlic in the ground in November, and you get quite a haul. I also harvested some onions that were kind of just looking a bit saggy. So and these are overwintered onions grown from sets, and they were planted around about the same time as the garlic, and some of them done pretty good. I think I'm quite pleased with them. So we're gonna pull them out of the buckets and dry them and try to store some of them. Overwintered onions aren't supposed to store as well as kind of grown from seed, grown from sets aren't supposed to store. So we'll see. Even if they last a couple of months, that's great, just to last us over summer. And the onions have been great this year. Certainly worth doing the overwintered ones, because we've been pulling ones that go to seed and just using them as spring onions, and they've been great. So definitely worth growing. There they are, and they're quite a good size. I'm quite pleased with those. Good medium-sized onions from a little extra flower water bucket. This is just such a good tip using these buckets, and I got that tip from another YouTuber called Homegrown Veg, and it's just fantastic because he just like transformed the way I can use really dead spaces in the garden with these buckets, and you can get so much in, and they're so productive, and you can move them around, and yeah, really good tip. And I use a lot of his tips just because they're fab. And here's another bucket. I'm really pleased with these overwintered onions. You can see the root balls, they've done so well, and they're great as well. And I put those and the beauty of using the buckets, like I said, was you can move them around, and these went on the patio in the full sun, and they've just loved that. And they'll dry off in the conservatory for a few weeks, and then I'll probably cut them down a little bit and tidy them up and just leave them to dry for a good month before I try and store them, but I might be using them up in the meantime as well. And all of this soil just literally gets reused. I put some more goodness into it, like chicken manure, pellets and bloodfish and bone, and it goes straight back in the bucket and it'll grow something else. As you can see, these are the empty buckets, and that they've had some bloodfish and bone and some chicken manure pellets. There's the onions, quite a few there. I'm quite pleased with those. They're great. I think those must be some little shallots that I grew, which haven't done brilliantly, but okay. And here's me using the buckets for some sad-looking tomato plants that are long overdue planting. They're just spare really, but I hate to waste plants, so if I've got a bucket in the go, we'll see what happens. And it's amazing what you can get out of just a plant that looks half dead, and you pop it in the bucket, and there it goes. And that's me just kind of popping in the bloodfish and bone and topping the buckets back up with the compost. Great. Probably would refresh it a little bit if it's looking a bit dry with some maybe new compost, but other than that, pop in the compost bin, and there you go.